Welcome to bopshyExplains. In today's video we're going to be discussing the psychological thriller movie Gerald's Game from a different perspective. Instead of just analysing the plot, characters and themes, we're going to explore how we would survive the same ordeal as the protagonist in the movie. Based on the Stephen King's novel of the same name, Gerald's Game is a story of survival and self-discovery. In the movie, Carla Gugino's character, Jessie, is left handcuffed to a bed in a remote cabin after her husband, Gerald, dies unexpectedly during a sex game. She must find a way to free herself while dealing with her traumatic past and present circumstances. So, in this video, we'll dive into what we could do in the same situation to increase our chances of survival. We'll analyse the protagonist's actions and determine what we could do differently. We'll also discuss the psychological aspects of being trapped in a remote location with no help in sight. If you're a fan of intense psychological thrillers and enjoy exploring hypothetical scenarios, then you're in the right place. So let's get started and explore how we would survive Gerald's Game. We begin down a scenic road, hearing over the radio that there's been local break-ins and burglaries. This should be immediately concerning as we're far away from local law enforcement and neighbours are far in between, if at all there. We're staying in a prime target for burglaries, as lakeside houses mostly operate as holiday homes and are often left unattended for prolonged periods of time. We should keep this in mind for when we arrive. Careless driving by Gerald means we almost hit a beloved family pet. We know this because he has a collar, and any sane person would call animal services, as the dog is likely to be chipped and they can be returned to their owners. Importantly, the dog is scavenging a roadkill. This suggests that he's been missing for a lengthy period of time and could mean his owners are in trouble. So a call to 911 might prove the best decision.
At least one casket.
What the fuck, Gerald?
Should do something about those strays.
Gerald, this isn't some inner city suburb. Strays at a lakeside hamlet is not normal, especially one as nice as this. After Jessie and Gerald arrive, Jessie raids the kitchen. She attempts to feed the feral dog Wagyu steaks. Lucky dog. Following this, they head to the bedroom for some hanky-panky. Yes, let's leave all the entrances open and unlocked, despite the warnings over the radio. And I don't think they're following Cao Cao, who used this as a tactic against Lu Bu during the warlord era in China. After being securely fastened, Gerald conveniently suffers a catastrophic heart attack, dropping dead immediately. With our hands tied, it's impossible to administer CPR. Jessie makes the right decision to push Gerald off her with her legs, but I would have made sure that we didn't push him too far. This way we could subside off him in the long term if needed. Gross, I know, but it could be our only way to survive. After all, the human body contains on average 130,000 calories and 6 litres of blood. Not knowing what comes next, I would have bit down on Gerald's jugular, siphon off what we could, as this may be our only chance, as after cardiac arrest, blood circulation will stop and begin the process of livor mortis, or the gravitational settling of blood, so we don't have long. Luckily, Gerald seems to be important enough to be called on his weekend getaway, so it wouldn't take long for his people to get worried if he didn't answer his phone. Although this does mean we'd likely have to wait till Monday at the earliest for people to send help. With this in mind, I recommend Jessie following the rule of 3, meaning we need to find water in 3 days to survive, but because Jessie's inside and stationary, scientists conclude that a person can survive up to a week without water, but that is hopeful thinking. Now we have a rough timeline of how long we can last without water, our next concern should be trying to save as much energy as we can. With the windows and doors open like this, it means that we'll be subject to the elements, which could lead to hypothermia if we don't get under the covers. When Jessie finally begins to understand her predicament, she hears a loud noise from the kitchen. Here I'd be hesitant to call for help, despite my current situation. This is because of what I heard on the radio. I would initially listen out for any voices and other noises to better discern who or what made that noise. Well, hello there, little fella.
You're a rescue dog.
And you're a sweet thing. You sure look friendly. Why don't you... Jessie, what the fuck? Let man nourish himself. Now we've come to terms with our husband being eaten, I would try and befriend the dog and see if we can get him to fetch our phone on the bedside table. Better yet, we should try and ask Siri to call 911, or ask Google if you're part of the Android master race. Most phones are able to do this. We should try this as soon as possible, as smartphone batteries have between 8 hours to 2 days depending on the battery health. Not even 24 hours in and Jessie's already lost her mind. This isn't good. because when dehydration and starvation set in, this will be magnified, so we're in for a tough time. Well, turns out Gerald is more interesting dead. During his monologue, he reminds Jessie that it's been over 5 hours and the sun is setting soon. She has indeed wasted this time. We learn the garden is cut, house is made ready, and the closest neighbours are over half a mile away. This means no gardeners, cleaners, or people to help. Well, not at least until Gerald's work gets worried. As outside help is too risky and likely ineffectual, we'll have to do this on our own. During Jessie's initial panic, we saw the bedposts sway back and forth. This suggests that if we persist in pulling, they could be broken. To help Jessie, we should try and leverage her leg against the post. This would give her a better chance to get out. Aside from breaking the posts, we could also make the painful route and keep sliding our hand back. This would likely result in a broken, skinned hand, but at least we'd be free. But this would be my last resort. Following the failed attempt at reaching the phone, and imaginary Gerald warning us he never charged it, we should position our legs above to see if we can pry off the shelf on the wall. We could also use this to help inch the phone closer to us. This is a risky strategy though, as we would expend much needed energy and water, so I'd only attempt this if the shelf budged with firm force. Also, we have to remember that fake Gerald and Jessie are a figment of real Jessie's imagination. This means whatever they tell us is what Jessie is trying to tell herself, so we can make the assumption that Gerald not charging his phone is factual. We're later reminded that Gerald left his water on the shelf. Jessie can also reach this. She demonstrates that the shelf can be moved. She should angle her legs and position them in front of the water and have her hands tilt the shelf until it moves to the side. We can then retrieve it with our feet. Not sure I could do this, but I do have faith in Jessie. While the water may seem the primary concern, I would still move the shelf off the hangings and use it for the phone. After Jessie opts for an easier route, she realizes she can't drink the water with her hands. So I would use our knees to place the water on them and drink from that position. If not, at least take the shelf off the hinges and retrieve the phone. Instead, Jessie takes the stem route and fashions a makeshift straw to drink from the glass. Smart. Fake Jessie is right. We should conserve the water, but we shouldn't wait too long. This is because there's been many cases of hikers found dead with plenty of water. Before heading to sleep, I would definitely place myself under the covers. This is because your body temp decreases by 1 to 2 degrees when you go to sleep, so it could lead to hypothermia if we're not careful. Old Cujo here just heard footsteps and dipped. He wasn't any use at all. Yeah, we really are fucked here, but the last thing I would do is close my eyes. Luckily, Bigfoot here hasn't immediately murdered us. Instead, he conducts a show and tell and showcases all of his collection of stolen goods. This is why you should pay attention to the radio, because it was stated that there have been local break-ins. Anyway, he just showcased his stolen goods. Connect the dots. Here I would attempt to ask questions and try to humanize myself. This way I could assess the best plan to have them help us. Following Jessie's brush with death, she wakes up in a new predicament. Yeah, losing circulation to our extremities is a bad way to go. There isn't really any way to avoid this though. Other than not sleeping, we could try to mitigate the chances. One way we could do this is by sleeping upright and hope for the best. Now we've seen a footprint and the man has not tried to help us, we can assume he isn't there to help. We could try and call out, but this would reveal to him that we know he's not a dream. Best bet is to stay quiet and pretend we think he is fake. This could mean he lets his guard down. This would give us a good chance to defend ourselves if he were to do anything. To conserve energy for later endeavours, Jessie hits the sack. Okay, we've just been bitten by a dog, and judging by what he's been eating, that's likely to get infected. More pressing, however, is the fact that he bit us, and we have a man who knows we're tied up. This should confirm to us that we are alone and not to expect any help. With her newfound predicament, Jessie opts to break the glass of water and cut her hands to lubricate them. Not the worst idea, but why would she not try to drink the water first? Following her plan, Jessie fashions a makeshift wrist slitter to help her cut her wrist. In the process, she flays her hand in a pretty brutal fashion, Ramsay Bolton style. Jessie intuitively moves to bed to retrieve her phone, which happens to be dead. Then her attention focuses on retrieving the key, which is then able to undo her cuffs with. Seeking water and treating her hand was a good idea, but our next focus should be the man returning. Unluckily, she passes out, but at least landing on the bed. It also means that dog is less likely to, well, never mind. After a quick scrap with the dog, it's on to the next task. Wisely, Jessie heads for the car keys when she's interrupted by the dog's whining. Thank you, dog, this is good. The dog has warned us that he's heard something, likely the man. I wouldn't waste any time. I'd back into the corner and hide. Better yet, behind the door. Knowing the dog is a pussy, we shouldn't expect his help. With our right and presumably dominant hand incapacitated, then fighting should be our last resort. The man also appeared large and a seasoned weirdo, so it's safe to say he has experience with this sort of confrontation. Instead, Jessie chooses for neither and to simply stand in the view, giving away her advantage of surprise, not even attempting to retrieve an object or a weapon.
Moonlight.
Okay, this is not at all how I thought this would go down. Now we have a vehicle, why are we driving like this? There's no need, plus it just increases the risk of us damaging it and leaving us stranded with Corel stricken if he chose crack instead of acting. Do you want to focus on the road? The last thing we need to do is veer off the road and die in some ditch. Jesus, Jessie, come on, take a break if you need, or drive a little slower. Brilliant, we deserve that. At least some neighbours heard it. I guess Jessie could only make it half a mile down the road. Jessie then wakes up in a hospital bed and it's all over. Following Jessie's narrow escape from no one, she does in fact beat Gerald's game. For this reason, Gerald's game gets an A tier rating, simply because not many people could flay their own hand, myself included. Thank you for watching, let me know in the comments what you would have done differently, and leave any suggestions on what films you'd like to see in the future.